Hey there, everyone. This is Dr. Yam, your Keep It Simple coach for the Small Biz Society. Good evening, everyone. This is Make It Happen Monday for my newbie entrepreneurs who are out there trying to make things happen for themselves. And also, I am your pardon moi. I'm Dr. Yam, your Keep It Simple coach, the host and sponsor of the Small Biz Society Facebook group, where those of you who have just launched your business are hanging out as DIYers, do-it-yourself entrepreneurs, where we focus on strategies for marketing and for mentoring to help you get where you're trying to head out in your work of as a business owner. So welcome, welcome, welcome. For those of you who are new to the group, hello. Great to have you on board. So listen, tonight we're getting ready to launch a week-long series that I think you're going to be really interested in knowing about, because I know that there's a lot of anxiety out there. And I know that you really want to do these things about working on your business, but you're kind of like, I don't know, kind of not really comfortable. So what are we really talking about? So my question for you today is, are you suffering from business emailing anxiety? Yes, anxiety for sending out that business email. So we're going to talk about that tonight. And then for the rest of the week, I'm going to be giving you some strategies and walking you through setting up and getting an email campaign off the floor, so you don't have to have that anxiety. Well, you may still have anxieties, because I don't know about you, but pushing that button to send is a pretty powerful moment. So let's even talk about that, which we'll talk about in a minute. So for those of you, if you haven't already done so, please allow StreamYard to see your comments, and then I can see you. I see comments already coming through, so welcome. Hey there, Mary Gwen. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Nice to see you tonight. So listen, like I was talking about, today we're going to answer the question, are you suffering from business emailing anxiety? And what are some things that you can do to avoid such a feeling? So I'm going to give you some tips with respect to that tonight. So I want to say welcome. And again, if you have any questions, you can put them here, down here inside of the comments. For those of you who are watching the recording, you can still post your questions. I'm happy to take any of that you have, and I will answer your questions here. Or if you want to, you can even direct message me, and I'll be happy to address your needs over in a private chat as well. So let's get into it. I always like to do a little research before I start my conversations with you guys. And so one of the things that I know that is critical when it comes to feelings, when it comes to your business, and making sure that, we all want to be on our best game when it comes to operating our business. And one of the critical things that we think is that we want to be selling, right? We're all about selling our business, selling our products. Well, that's great. However, there's more to that. Transaction. So you can't get caught up in the transactional aspects of your business. And part of what we are talking about in our Jumpstart Your Small Biz Society, those who are just launching their business, is about that personal branding. And personal branding is all about connections. And so when you're working on your business, you don't want to just think about it simply as this cold transaction. I give you stuff, you give me money. I give you stuff, you give me money. That's not the end all be all to starting your business. It's some deeper than that. So if that's where your head is right now, is just on the exchange and the transaction of giving and taking, you got some learning to do. And so part of content marketing and a lot of things that we focus on here in the Small Biz Society is really focusing on that as a marketing strategy for yourself, and as an economical one. So you'll be learning along those lines throughout the week. But let's just focus right now on email marketing, which is a part of content marketing. In particular, why you've been hesitating on taking that strategy down the entrepreneurial journey and really trying to focus on building and learning more about your customers and building out those relationships. Well, there's actually some data that's out there. So email is one of the most common triggers for social anxiety. and productivity when it comes to the workplace, let alone in your business lifestyle as well. But your productivity is related to that anxiety. And there was some research done in Psychology Today. Dr. Alice Boyles, want to give credit where credit is due. And so one of the things that she puts in her anxiety toolkit is the fact that emails, the reason why people have this anxiety about emailing is because emailing is asynchronous. And asynchronous meaning that it's one way. It's a delay between sending that email and receiving a response. And also because the context, or the what we call context clues, are missing in that exchange because it's not personal. They're reading whatever you're writing. You're hoping they're reading it in the way in which you intended them to read it, right? And so if they don't know you, they don't know your personal gestures, you don't know your idiosyncrasies, your tonality, all of those things kind of come into play. And so it's hard to understand what the recipient is going to do when they get it. And that's part of where the anxiety really lies. So if you don't know if that person is relying, you don't know how they're doing when they're receiving that, even they're getting that particular email, the position that they're in, just the circumstances that they may be in at the time that they're getting that particular email. And all of those things are out of your control. So it makes it a little bit harder. And so pushing that send button is a little, pressure. So there's a factor that's involved when it comes to sending out an email that, it's tied emotionally to confusion, as well as the anxiety that kind of builds up when you're sending it out. So we certainly want to make sure that, how do we avoid having those types of anxieties so that you don't fall into this abysmal, kind of I'll call it a hole, for lack of a better term. Let me just double check my comments here. Okay. Alrighty. Now, so make sure let's make sure I was typing it in right. So what I wanted to do with you today is, let me go back to my banners. I wanted to give you some tips around things that you can do to avoid sending your email, and then also to invite you all to a learning series we're going to be doing inside of the Small Biz Society this week, where we're going to be really, basically what we're calling it is a reset. And a reset to me means forget about what you've ever done in the past, even if you did it yesterday, and you felt it was an abysmal mess, and you're like, you probably told yourself, I'll never try that again. You're going to give yourself permission to do a reset. Nobody's going to judge you. We're going to let everything just kind of fall to the wayside, and we're going to start new and fresh. And it's going to be okay, because this time you're going to go into it with some sense of control, and you'll also have a strategy and a plan and action. So I'm going to walk you through the steps of creating your email campaign and all the pieces and parts so that you can plan and get it started for yourself. So all of this is all part of content marketing. And as part of members of our Small Biz Society, that's what we're doing. As small biz owners, solopreneurs, those of us who have small teams and we're leading others, is we are doing this work ourselves, or at least to a certain degree, or we may have people that we're able to outsource, which is great, but you certainly want to know what you're outsourcing so you know how to manage it. So that's part of being a member of the Small Biz Society, is that we are do-it-yourself entrepreneurs making things happen using content marketing strategies as a means of helping us to build and grow our business. So that's what that's there for. So if you're not a member today, please join us over at smallbizsociety.info. Answer 3 simple questions. It's a private Facebook group and community where we're doing other learning opportunities. So if you happen to be watching off in my Keep It Simple Coach business page, I want to say thank you. Show me some love and leave an emoji, and know that other resources and information are available to you there. So let's get started, and let's address some of the tips that you can use to avoid this level of anxiety when it comes to sending out that mass email. So we're not talking about that. Well, you can still have anxiety. I shouldn't say it doesn't apply to any email send, right? Because I don't know about you, but I do quite a bit of emailing and individuals and in mass groups. And so I'm always kind of like, when it comes to setting the email. So what are some things that I thought about that you could consider doing so that you can get over your fears when it comes to sending out mass emails to the people who you really want to connect with. Because at the end of the day, here's the thing: you want to get past transactional and you want to get into nurturing and building your customer base, because you don't want that transaction to be singular. You don't want it to be this one off. You want it to be this kind of ongoing come back for more. Right? It's kind of like when they come over for dinner and they had your cooking and they're like, damn, that was some damn good cooking. I wouldn't mind coming back for another piece of pie or having some second helpings, right? Because it was good. It was served up well. And so you want to do it in the same vein when it comes to emailing, which also means it's about consistency, which we'll get into on another topic level. But for today, let's just focus on what are some things that you can do to avoid that level of anxiety, and how is it that you can manage to doing it? Because at the end of the day, sending out emails is a very real issue, right? We've got people who know that they should be emailing and sending out correspondences to their customers, both future as well as your existing ones. So even if you've been dormant for a while, don't think that this is all for nothing, that, oh, well, I haven't emailed in forever. And you got a list, doesn't matter. No matter which conditions are, you can reset today and keep it moving. And there'll be ways in which you can build your list as well. So don't give up on things that you may not have done just yet. But one of the factors that I also learned in this research, in addition to Dr. Boyle's, is that it's considered one of those common triggers for social anxiety. And it's also, how can I put this? Because of that gap in between, we don't know what we're going to get back in return. So how do you manage the email anxieties? Well, there's a couple of things. Once you have an idea of what those triggers are for your anxieties, you can then head them off really fast so that they don't become more problematic than they already are. So some of those triggers that are typical, I know for me in particular, is there's the fear of typos. I don't care how many times I look at something, and there are people on this video who are listening who know I have a little bit of dyslexia. So even though I think I'm reading it and seeing it and it looks good to me, it's not until after, of course, you don't catch it until after you hit the send mail, that you figure like, oh, darn, I didn't do that just quite right. So typos are usually one of the number one fears. So I guess one of the things that obviously is, invest in a good editing program. Another fear is having broken links. And so again, there's ways in which you can check it. Some of those email automation systems actually do a check for everything before it actually sends. So there's some really good sophisticated systems that are out there that can kind of help make some of those checks before you even go out. So although those are some solutions and they're not really complicated, right? You can be really proactive and make sure that you can kind of head down the road. But here are some things that you may want to consider that you can beat that fear. So first thing you really want to think about is, why are you even sending the email? So you want to be thinking about, as you're crafting out your email campaign, is you want to be sure that not just the one single email, right? Because there's two different types of emailing campaigns. There's the one-off message, like what we call a broadcast, right? That you're just sending out to everyone or to a segmented group. And then there's also an email series that is part of the buyer's journey or the customer's journey, meaning that you're going to be sending them a sequence of emails over time. So no matter what, but still you want to understand is, what's the why behind each email that you're sending? Why? What are you doing? Giving it some intentional purpose and making sure that you're doing it for the right reasons, right? So you want to make sure that you have, as understanding your why is going to help you in reasoning behind not having that anxiety. Another thing that you may want to think about having is create a checklist. There's nothing wrong with that. It's easy to mess up a really good email if you don't have a checklist. There's certain things you always want to know that you have as a part of an email, or there's certain parts or pieces that you always want to make sure are in it. This is really true, for instance, when you want to make sure, like, for instance, that there's a subject line, or there's this setting up in some of those email systems that are pretext. Did you make sure that that's done? So having a really good checklist, making sure that the images are there, that you want to be there, the signatures there, the call to action, all of those pieces and parts. What are the things that you want to make sure, no matter what the email is, always want to have these pieces and parts checked off and confirmed. So making a checklist is also a good thing to consider. Another thing to help you avoid anxiety is get a proofreader. Now, it all depends. If you this is why writing and giving yourself a gap is also part of the fears and the anxieties. Is don't wait till the last minute to send something out. If you can't send it to have somebody else look at your mail message, then darn sure make sure that you invest in some type of a grammar check to at least 80 to 90% of the content is more on point than anything. But having somebody else looking at it, particularly somebody who has a more grammatical eye than you do, it will always be helpful. So if you can put that into your workflow, that you have somebody to be your proofreader before you send something out, really, really helps. That's going to take your anxiety down a whole lot. Let me just double check questions over here. Okay. Okay. So, and then a fear that other people will, I talked about was the fear of the broken links. The reason why that is that one of the things you hate to get when you're receiving an email is that you go to click on something and then the link don't work. Well, what was the point of putting it there? And then, of course, the person thinks, well, if you didn't think enough to want to check the links to make sure that they work, and I'm clicking on something and it's not taking me where I want it to go, I usually do the courtesy to my fellow writers is that I usually will respond back to them. It's like, hey, this link isn't working, fix it. Now, that's the hard part. The hard part is if links don't work, it's not like you can take the email back. That's part of the anxiety, right? The anxiety is I can't get that email back once I send it. So sending out a link that's broken, that's where that anxiety comes in. Now, yes, granted, it can happen to the best of us. But again, some systems will check for your link. You check your links, make sure that they're all working. If not, put it as a part of your checklist, because that's the other thing you're going to need to do. You do all that work in creating this email, and then the darn links don't work, which is all a part of you either signing up for something, buying something, whatever the offer is. And so it defeats the whole purpose. So you really want to make sure that you invest in the time when it comes to links. So do that. Again, fear of your typos, invest in a good grammatics. Now, Bill Gates and Microsoft Office does not have a good grammar check. Sorry, just a reality. So don't rely on just Word or even your email body if you're just sending it as a one-off in your personal email, but inside of the email automation systems, they typically do not have anything really built in. And so you really want to invest in a really good tool. In my case, I use Grammarly. I'll put a link for that here in the video below so that you can invest in that. There's a free version, but hey, spend the 60 or 70 bucks a year and buy the pro version, okay? Again, it's an investment. So you want to be able to avoid any of those types of costs. Because I'll tell you one thing, I'd rather spend the $80 than the cost of embarrassment, if you know what I'm saying. Okay, spend the money. It's an investment. You get to write it off on your taxes. So it's a win-win. Another thing that people have a fear of when it comes to emailing, that maybe people just aren't doing enough of it, is that there's a fear that the images or the elements inside of your message aren't rendering. meaning it's taking a really long time. You might have put in a Giphy, you might have picked up some type of a picture, anything along those lines. Maybe the fonts aren't landing the way they should, because remember, the pretty font that you picked out doesn't always resonate or render well on the recipient's end. So sometimes you get all fancy only to find out it looks crappy on another person's browser or setting. And so those are things you want to be mindful of. And people are like, I never knew that what I type doesn't look the same on every browser or on every type of device. And the answer is it doesn't. So those are the things you want to be really mindful of. If you're choosing, so just as an aside, if you want to have that really kind of fanciful text in your messages, and like for your banners and things like that, you're better off creating them as an image and having that static than dealing with like an exchange of the fonts, files, the font types. That's what causes it not to land very well. It's more easier, it's less likely for an image not to convert because there's no converting. It's an image is an image. But when you're changing out font styles, that's where it can start to look kind of ugly. So you want to think about that. Of course, there's the fear of bad results. Now, in this particular case, what we're talking about is if you're doing it as a kind of an email campaign and you were pitching something and you didn't get the results you were looking for, then people's like, I don't want to get the bad news. And I get that. But here's the thing about bad results. Either the bad results is on you in the messaging, or it's not, or who you sent it to. It may not, it's just maybe a combination. But that fear of thinking that I'm fearful that I'm not going to get the results that I get. But here's the thing. It's better to get some results and have some data and be able to fix it. So not sending it is not helping you at all. So it's better to do it and try it and fail than not to have done it at all, as they say. So deal with it, fix it, and then you'll know better next time. So those are the things that you'll learn more when you're looking at marketing email campaigns. And then you may feel that there's a fear for you having, maybe some bad data when it comes to your personalizing, right? So maybe you're not sending the information to the right intended audience. And so it just lands kind of flat, and your lack of personalizing it, and that also takes time to do. So that means when I talk about personalizing, I don't mean saying, hey, Jeff, and putting the person's first name. That's the easy part. Personalizing means that sometimes you may have to send out email campaigns to different sub-segments and customizing the text so that you're very intentional about who you are writing to. So as much as you might be sending, it might be ideal to share this information with your full list. Even with that said, it may be better for you to still segment the list and tweak it to these different audiences because they're all part of a different need and why they came into your list to begin with. And maybe how you're personalizing is going to make a difference. But the lack of doing that can, in and of itself, be a form of fear that you may want to consider avoiding. And of course, last but not least, there's just the fear of sending it to the wrong list. And who doesn't like that, right? It's like sending out a card and mailing it to the wrong person, and they're getting this beautiful card that wasn't meant for them. And they're like, oh, I love the card. Then you're like, oh, it wasn't for me. And so the same holds true. If you send it to the wrong group, then you're going to get less response and less likely to get it open because you want strong email openings, right? And so you want to make sure that you're sending it to the right list. So when I talk about the right list, you may have a list of 1,000 people on your list, but you may have multiple lists. I have tons of different segmented lists because of how people came on. So I have a list for each one of my offers. I have a list for each type of group or audience or events because it's a way in which you're tagging people inside of the systems. And so you do want to make sure that when you're sending off any type of correspondence that you are sending it to the right list, which also goes back to my first one on create a checklist, and then you'll double check to make sure it's going to the right list. And that's going to help you out a lot. So just as a wrap up, It's natural to feel anxiety. It's natural to have a fear for having failure, right? We get it. But you don't want to let that fear stand in your way of having a productive means of producing and connecting with your customers. And that's what you really want. And so email marketing is going to allow you to do that. So I hope you found this to be a helpful motivation for today. This is Make It Happen Monday. So with Make It Happen Monday, I want to see you all join me tomorrow inside of our Small Biz Society, where we're going to be working through the steps on a reset for email marketing and campaigns and kind of getting everything off on the right foot. So I certainly hope that you will join us over in the Small Biz Society.info. Please join us. This is Dr. Yam. I am your Keep It Simple coach, and let's get busy. Have a good one. Bye-bye.